Today is the first workshop of our winter series for Volunteer University. Essentially, these workshops are specifically for volunteers who um, volunteer with SJPL. And truly, it's just for you to get inside information about the different components of the library. As you know, we have 25 locations throughout the San Jose area, and each one is dynamic, and there's a lot of working parts to make the library just such a wonderful place for all of you, and also those in the community. So, based on the workshops from the fall, when I sent out the SurveyMonkey feedback form, I had asked, what do you want to see in the series that are coming up? And a lot of you talked about wanting to know more about how tech services works and the book selection and everything that goes behind the scenes of that. So I asked my colleagues from Tech Services. We have Juana Ramirez will be leading the workshop along with some other folks from her team who will be here today and have some really good information for you. But before we get started, I just want to have some housekeeping rules for everyone to ensure that we are respectful for our presenters. I will ask all of you to mute. We do have an ongoing chat function, so if you have any questions throughout the presentation, I encourage you to ask via the chat. I will be attentive to that. Depending on the flow of conversations, we either can chime in and see if we have our presenters that can address the questions in the chat, or we can wait towards the end of the presentation. I did allocate some time for questions and answers, but with that being said, I do want to hand this off to Juana, who will lead us in today's workshop.
Hi, Carolina. I sent a request for sharing my screen. I'm going to be helping with the slideshow.
Absolutely. So I just accepted the request, Ben. Let me know if you're able to
Thank you.
share your screen.
Oops, sorry. Okay. Hi. Welcome to Volunteer University. Before we get started, we're going to do some quick introductions. I'm Juana Ramirez. I am one of the library assistants here in technical services at the King Library.
Hello.
Go ahead, Ben.
Sorry. Yes, I'm Benjamin Martinez. I work with electronic resources and collection development here in technical service as well.
And I'm Laura Hammond. I'm a librarian in technical services, and I work in collection development as one of the selectors. And I think all of us have been around for quite a while, quite a while in our roles and in other roles in the library at different locations.
Okay, so we'll get started. Today, so we're going to cover how we get materials at San Jose Public Library. Each one of our libraries is bursting at the seams with materials. I mean, if you walk into any of our libraries, we have, our libraries are full. When you walk into a library and check out your book, you may wonder, how did it get there? Why the book was chosen? And how was it chosen to be put on different branches' shelves? Well, each item on our shelves has undergone a journey before getting into your hands or the public hands. All of the work that goes into acquiring materials, getting them to the library shelves happens in the library unit called Technical Services, which is ours. And this is where the journey of the book begins. So what is Technical Services and what do we do? Technical Services is a unit responsible for obtaining and preparing library materials for use by customers. That also includes helping to ensure the integrity of our library catalog, making sure that it's up to date and has the correct information. Although this work happens behind the scenes, it influences user experiences for so many of the library services. SJPL Technical Services Unit houses collection development. Those are the people that select the books. E-resources, the people that manage electronic subscriptions, databases, and other online resources that we offer. Acquisitions, the people that order materials. Periodicals, those who handle the subscriptions, distribution of newspapers and magazines. Fund accounting, those are the people that pay everything, all of our bills and invoices, and cataloging. The staff that enter the materials in our online catalog so that customers can search for them, place holds on them, check them out. So technical services basically deals with all the library materials that our customers borrow from the point of selecting the item to getting it to your branch and into your hands. We select, order, unpack, receive, process, pay for, catalog, and sort every single item or material that comes in. That includes every book, DVD, music CD, audiobooks on CD, all of the periodicals, ebooks, e-audiobooks, and the e-resources that the library provides. This is a picture of majority of our mighty team of about 24 staff from all classifications. We have librarians, library assistants, clerks, pages, and aides. We also have 25 selectors that work at different branches that select for specific collections, including 13 language selectors that select for 19 world language collections. Okay, so now that you know a bit about us and the work we do to get the books and other materials out to the branches, during this presentation, we're going to cover the whole life cycle of a book, from selecting all the way through distribution. We'll be covering each part of this chart. If you can see it, we'll go through selecting, ordering, delivery, receiving, accounting, processing, cataloging, distribution. But first, we'll start what happens even before all of that. And I'll pass it off to Laura.
Yes. And so what starts before all of that is the documentation and the policies that guide our work. So our work acquiring materials for the library is guided by official library policy, specifically our collection development policy. And that is publicly available on our website. It is linked here. You can access it on our website if you just go to the About and Policies along with all the other policies for SJPL. And it notes the scope and the purpose of the collection. The library is not a repository that acquires every book ever published. We don't have the space for everything, and we're not an archive, so we don't keep things forever. What we are is a working public library that serves the residents of the city of San Jose. Our collection development policy defines the purpose of our collection, as you see on the screen here, as serving the needs of a diverse community. It also states that we specifically select for material with diverse viewpoints. And of note, we will have material that is potentially controversial or contradictory. That's because as a public library, a core tenet of our work is intellectual freedom. So some of you may already be familiar with intellectual freedom since you're in the library world, but a little bit more about it. Intellectual freedom is the right of every individual to both seek and receive information from all points of view without restriction. It provides for free access to all expressions of ideas through which any and all sides of a question, cause, or movement may be explored. Intellectual freedom gives people the right to think for themselves by giving them access to material from all perspectives. This freedom allows people to form their own ideas and opinions by questioning the world around them. As library employees, we apply intellectual freedom to our daily work by ensuring that every member of the community has access to a vast array of ideas and information. And as a public library, we're also guided by the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights, which is here on the left-hand side. It is a document based on the First Amendment that guides libraries in serving their communities and protecting the rights of all patrons. It serves to preserve intellectual freedom, and in 1970, the San Jose City Council passed the Library Materials and Service Policy, which fully adopted the ALA's Library Bill of Rights as our official city policy. A new addition to this conversation is the California Freedom to Read Act, which was, I think it was passed last year, but it just went into effect on January 1st. And amongst other things, it requires that public libraries have a formal collection development policy available to the public, and it protects materials from being removed from a collection due to content or viewpoint. So we choose materials based on the tenets outlined in our collection development policy, supporting intellectual freedom, and as a city entity, we purchase our items from city-approved vendors. Since we offer such a wide variety of materials to our community, this means we buy from a lot of different places. So let's get into that piece of choosing items. Let's talk through the selection process. So generally, like, how do we pick what goes into the library? Generally, selectors find items to purchase from book reviews in professional journals, lists in professional journals. Those can be both physical or digital. Here's just a few of the heavy hitters: Kirkus Reviews, New York Times Book Review, and Publishers Weekly. There are also professional journals devoted to specific topics, so specific language materials, specific forms of media, like the Hollywood Reporter would be a big one for DVDs, TV series, School Library Journal for juvenile materials. There's, kind of a big batch of them. We also find books via publishing media like Book Talk, if you've heard of it, or books being made into movies or series. We also pay attention to book awards like the National Book Awards, the Carnegie Awards just happened, the Edgar Mystery Awards, the Nebula. There's a whole bunch of book awards that we all have to track. One happened just yesterday, the ALA Youth Media Awards that named the Caldecott and Newbery winners. We also get shopping carts or publishing lists supplied by our vendors. And here's just a little smattering of some of our vendors here. And we find new titles through staff or customer suggestions. We can't buy everything, but we do buy materials that we think will circulate within our community. So we buy materials from specific vendors that are contracted with the city. This means we can't buy materials from everywhere. They have to come from vetted vendors. Most English materials come shelf ready. They're shipped to technical services who do the things mentioned in all the first part of this presentation, and they go through our inter-branch delivery team to branches. We get a lot of requests from customers to purchase specific titles, and we do our best to fulfill those requests. But as I said earlier, we can't purchase everything. We are limited by a number of factors: by budget, by shelf space, and by availability from our vetted city contracted vendors. I saw some questions in the chat. I think what we're going to go through soon is going to answer some of that. So we'll take a look at those as we get to the end of the presentation, but we might answer your questions as we continue going. We also sometimes received advanced reader copy versions of books. So these are pre-publications. They might have errors in them, but they're sent before they are published so that we can review those books to see if they're a good fit. I'm one of the selectors that focus on adult materials. And a friend once told me, she said, I'm jealous you get to be a tastemaker. And I told her I'm not a tastemaker, I'm a puzzle solver. So my job and the job of all of the selectors is to figure out what our community wants and will want before they want it. So that we can make sure that their local branch will have it on the shelves or it'll be in the catalog the moment that they consider that item and want to check it out. Since we have our selections spread out amongst so much staff, it allows us to have a bit of expertise in a certain area, and we were really able to hone in to meet the needs of those specific reading populations. So, for example, I don't know what our Spanish speaking community may want to read, but our Spanish language selectors that focus on those materials, they know what's popular amongst that reading population. And in addition to new releases, we also have to stay on top of older materials that are still popular and sort out what's still in publication, which can be a big limiting factor. We do get a lot of requests for older titles that just simply aren't published anymore, and we can't repurchase them until a publisher decides to republish it. Or older titles that we need to get more copies of. Because as we know, books get old, and when they get old, they fall apart and they need to be replaced. It's a bit of a never-ending process. And since we serve such a large and diverse community, we buy a lot of different collections for kids, adults, teens, items in different languages, kits for early childhood education, citizenship materials, and the lists go on. So next we'll get into how we determine how much to buy and what of. And I will pass it to Ben for that.
Yeah, so how do we determine the budget and how much to allocate collection demands? Well, the library has an annual budget that determines how much we spend on a material each year. This budget not only includes the cost of the materials being added to the library collection, but the tax of those items and any fees associated processing the items. We break down this budget into subcategories and assign a dollar amount to each of the categories for the year. We determine that dollar amount of analyzing statistics. Here you'll see is this an example of how we go about doing that. This is a capture from the last year's the Library and Commission, the Library and Education Commission. They meet every third Wednesday of the month, I believe. You can find more information about that. There's lots of insightful information that the librarians put together and our team puts together. Once we crunch all the numbers at the end of every fiscal year, we put together these reports that includes the collection amounts, the circulation totals, and then we compared the amount purchased from each respective collection to what was ordered versus received compared to previous years. Excuse me. The numbers are presented to our collection development teams, not just prior to getting to the Library Education Commission, they're presented to the collection development teams here within the library department, and then as well as library leadership. And they're also presented to City Council, which ultimately control the purse for us to receive more funds if necessary, if we have the opportunity. And we then determine what our budget affords, adjusting to the popular demands and our growing collections. In addition to looking at these stats, there are additional factors that must be considered, such as the cost per item for the collection. For example, children's board books cost significantly less than an adult hardcover. We also have to consider things like shelf space factors into the publishing world and the trends in the technology. For example, physical audiobooks are still in demand at our libraries currently, but publishers are no longer publishing them at the rate that they once were. This is something that changes throughout time. At one point, we had to make the jump from VHS to DVDs as well, and who knows what the landscape of this kind of media will shift into in the future. Will Blu-ray stay in fashion? Will there be a switch to Ultra HD, 4K, or go entirely to streaming digital? Only time will tell, but these are the kind of questions we have to ask and analyze each year as we are determining our budget allocations. Once we choose that, what books or other materials we want to provide for our community, then we'll start moving in our technology services. Oops, I jumped too quickly there. So now the life cycle of a book is what we get into next year. Now that you've learned about what happens before we even get to ordering a book, we will get into the next part, the life cycle of a book once an item has been selected. Uh, it goes through all the steps, as we mentioned earlier, ordering, delivering, receiving, accounting, processing, cataloging, and distribution. What does that mean, though? Let's peek at each of these steps. Uh, as we mentioned earlier, there are a number of selectors at SJPL for various collections, whom I work with collection development, and they communicate with me to give them those stats. So once the selectors have chosen the items, based on the communication we send back and forth and the queries that are necessary to make responsible decisions on selection, all those items are ordered and sent to a small group of staff here at Technical Services, here at the basement of the Martin Luther King Library, where Juana and I and Laura have our offices. Um, we order approximately 56 vendors throughout the world, Paris, France, Vietnam, Mexico, to name a few. We try to order most, if not of the new items 3 months prior to the publication date, but this is not always possible with all the collections. Once items have been ordered, they're delivered throughout the year. They arrive boxed on pallets to the technical services unit here. Items are then unpacked and sorted. All items are delivered centrally to the tech services here with us, where we continue with the next steps to the book's life cycle.
I think Juana's going to jump in on this next piece, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Many items in the library arrive shelf ready. So what that means is that we order them already processed with labels and ready to go out for circulation. But we also do receive many items that are unprocessed, which is without any labels at all. They just come, just the book, nothing else. You can see on the right side of the screen right here with all the yellow tags, these books all came in with the necessary labels that need to be on the book, which is usually barcode, the label, the spine label, so that public can find the items, and the RFID tags that are placed in there so that for security reasons. The items that we receive that are unprocessed do not come with any of that. So staff here in technical services has to do all of that work manually. Once the items come in, they're placed on carts and tagged. Each cart has separate tags telling us where in the process they are. So we can, so multiple people basically can work on the cart. So there's a bunch of different steps that that cart has to go through in order for it to be distributed to the branches. And everybody has to write off on the cart what they do and how far along they are. When we receive the materials, we have to check the items one by one from each box, check the packing slip, check it against the invoice to make sure that everything is there. We also have to check that the prices are correct. Sometimes items come in damaged, so we do have to review items, all of the items, just quickly try to go through them to make sure that none of them are damaged. We stamp them with the receive date, and that's how we line up the cards that you see in the picture on the right. So we know when the items arrived and basically how long they've been sitting there sometimes, because sometimes we can be a little backed up, and then we work on the oldest cart first. After that, the invoices are submitted to the accounting department, who then pays the vendors for all of the items that we received. I I think last year we received over 230,000 items. So you can imagine how many invoices and things that we have to double check. The items that are unprocessed that arrive without labels are placed first in our processing queue. Our processing specs vary depending on the location. So each location has their own labels and things that need to be on the book. But at minimum, they do get a barcode and they do get the RFID code, RFID tag, which ensures that the book's not lost or stolen. If you've been to any of our libraries, you've seen the gates when you walk in and out. The barcode and the RFID tags are then linked to the item's electronic record online and via the RFID pad, which is on the far right. That's what the RFID pad looks like. Most items do also get a spine label, which contains the call number. And that way, when you browse the shelves and the online catalog, you can easily locate the items on the shelf. And this is just some examples of some of our labels and processing, our labels that we use for processing. As you can see, they vary by location. So the items can be easily sorted and separated and shelved at all of the different SJPL library branches. We use cover overlays to distinguish between different collections from shelving. If you notice when you're in the library, children's has yellow, teens usually have the light blue, and then graphic novels have like green. If you've shelved some of the books, you were trained on that. This helps ensure that each item is meant or goes to the correct collection. So a children's room gets the children's books, the adult items stay in the adult areas, and it's easily checked to see if something's put in the wrong spot. A big thing that we use is a really good example of how we use these is for the graphic novels. We have graphic novels in children's, in teens, and in adults. And if you read graphic novels, we obviously don't want adult graphic novels in the children's area. So that's why all green tags go on the children's graphic novels, the blue ones go on teens, and the adults don't get any. Other things that we mark the books with is new labels. Each year we have a new color so that we know that we're just getting new stuff each year. We also have, the collection labels and Lucky Day stuff. So, yeah, next. That's just a little bit of the processing. Some of the items need to be jacketed, which is what's shown here on these pictures. Our staff manually jacket every single book that needs a jacket, which is usually hard-covered books. It helps increase durability and longevity on the books. So pulling them in and out of the shelves, it keeps it from damaging the corners. The DVDs, CDs, we all have to label those. Sometimes the DVDs, we have to rebox them and relabel them because the original packaging is not, it's not easily shelved on our shelves or in our gondolas where they're held. Especially like language CDs, sometimes they come in bigger boxes and we need to repackage them in the small ones. So that takes a lot of work. We have to cut and paste sometimes illustrations from the case, recase them. put RFIDs on all of the CDs. So it takes a long time. It's not a quick process when it's going through processing and tech services.
Yes, so it goes through a big process just so it can be checked out from the library. And then if you can advance the slide, Ben, while all this is going on, there's another important process that occurs, and that is cataloging. So the catalog acts like an index to the library collection. It tells you exactly where materials meeting specific criteria can be found. And all items in the catalog have a catalog record attached to them that provides access points such as title, author, subjects, illustrator, series, language, etc. So when an item's cataloged, it allows for someone to find all the information available at the library on a particular topic by a particular author or in a particular format. And the better the access, the more use the catalog receives. And just a little bit on the slide, we did processing and cataloging for over 11,000 items last fiscal year. There's a chunk of time it takes to create an original catalog record, which we don't always have to do. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we have had to catalog a lot of unique items, such as state and county park passes, laptops and iPads, Wi-Fi hotspots, toys, energy efficient kits, ukuleles, video cameras, whatever they throw at us that the public is going to want. We have to figure out a way to make them findable in our catalog. And so a little bit of what this looks like. Catalogs use something called MARC, which stands for Machine Readable Cataloging, and it allows us to encode all parts of a catalog record so that it can be searchable. So each part of a record is given a numbered catalog field so that you can search by that specific field. So this includes things like subject, title, ISBN, series, publisher, date, and anything else stored in the catalog record. So this is a screenshot of the back end of a MARC record and what it looks like. And this is what our team sees when they receive a record. So when material, book, CD, DVD comes through tech services, some of them do have full catalog records. So they come with an electronic record that is sent to us and loaded into our ILS, which is Sierra. Some only have partial catalog records, so it might not have all of this information, but might just have a title, might just have an author, might just have an ISBN. And some items, they don't have any records at all. We don't receive anything from our vendors. There's no place that we can get it, so we have to do original cataloging. And we have to fill out all the fields for that item when we do original cataloging. So this looks much different than what our patrons see, as you know from using the library website and catalog. They see our catalog and MARC records through something called a discovery layer, which takes all of this information and puts it in a user-friendly and easy-to-read format. So that discovery layer is what you see when you go to the library's website. In order for the catalog to work well, the data and the bibliographic records for our library materials have to be accurate and thorough. And the tech services team are the ones that work to ensure that this is the case, both with the records that we receive from the vendors and the ones that we have to create in-house. Because anything that's populated on a computer, you know, there's prone to error. There's always going to be issues. So when catalog records are accurate, it allows patrons to filter by category, such as the ones listed here on the screen. And each of these are listed within the catalog record. The cataloging step of the book's life cycle is really essential to helping customers find not only specific titles, but it allows them to find materials on related topics. So we have this example of hummingbirds, and then we'll show you what an actual record looks like. So here's an example of what a MARC record looks like in the discovery layer of the library catalog, so much more user-friendly than that big orange screen. It has all of the data fields displayed in a much more user-friendly format. And to ensure that these appear correctly, tech services staff check and they modify those MARC records. It's also what makes the filtering work on the right here of books, ebooks, etc. Those records have to be pristine to make sure that all the data fields match what we're seeing on the discovery layer. For example, here we're able to filter by format, but there are several other options as well. And once an item has been cataloged, meaning that a new record's either been created or we've received a record and we've modified or confirmed that it's correct, then cataloging staff confirm that that electronic record that we've received or have created is attached to the right item. So is this attached to the right ISBN? Is this attached to the right barcode so that when you request an item, you're actually getting the book that you requested? Because if it has the wrong record attached to it, it means you're going, like if I was looking for this book on hummingbirds, but the catalog record was incorrect and it was attached to a book on fish, I would get the wrong book. So cataloging staff confirms all of that stuff with the electronic record. They double check any processing bits, and then they place that item onto a cart for distribution, which is going to be the next part of the book's life cycle. So I can continue on, Ben, or did you want to take this piece?
I can take it.
Okay.
Okay, so once the items are fully processed and all of the labels are on them, they have records within the catalog. They're ready to go out to the shelves. Each one is sorted by location. Our technical services unit staff places them in bins by branch. They also use the branch code printed on the book labels to determine where an item is set to go. So if you get any of our items, as long as it's not a floating collection, it'll tell you what branch it goes to because it has the number and then the code. Floating items, we do have floating items that don't belong to any specific branch, but they float from branch to branch. So our staff just determine where they go during the distribution process. Selectors determine numbers of copies at any home locations for items to make sure that all branches get new materials regularly. So though items that do get specific branches, that's a part of the selector's job is to determine which one goes to where and who gets it. And then next, after the items are sorted in our bins, then they're moved up to our IB department, inter-branch delivery unit, which is on the first floor. A peek into it is on this right side right here, and they have all of the bins also separated by branch. So all of the ones that we put in our branches, they dump them in those ones. They transfer them to there's two sides, which is, you can't really see here, but one side is for holds. So if there are holds for patrons in the tech services side, our staff also check in all of the holds if it's a new item there, and they go directly into the hold bins in the routing department. Everything else goes into the regular bins just to go out to the branches to be shelved. Since SJPL is a large system with 25 locations, there's a lot of bins, if you can imagine. Right here in the picture, there's just one, but they're usually stacked about 4 high, and they get delivered every single day. It's daily work. And once it reaches the branches, the branch staff then unpacks it, checks it in, makes sure that the location is updated into the catalog so that on the customer side that they know that the item is there live at the branch ready to get checked out. So that way, when you walk into any of our San Jose Public Library branches, you can discover anything that's the next great read. So that's pretty much everything that we do in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot of other components that go into tech services, but that's, in a nutshell what each book goes through in technical services and how it gets out to the branches, to the public and to the customers. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much. And I know there's a lot of questions in the chat. I think that Laura was answering some of them, but I don't know if you want to go through them and
Yeah.
answer them live. So then that way people can,
Yeah, I can read some of the ones that I've already said, and then we can continue to answer. So there was a
yeah.
question about number of copies of a book to purchase. So how do we determine that? It varies per collection. So that is based on demand, budget, and shelf space. So we like to joke too, like if we just went by demand, our branches would just be filled with 10,000 copies of Dog Man. For those of you that have kids, it's a very popular graphic novel series. Some books cost less than others, so that's part of the equation too. Once each collection has a budget, it's up to the selector in that area to determine how many copies to purchase. Books that are more popular do tend to get more copies, but we can't always afford it because we don't want one book to eat up the whole budget. So we have to make sure that we balance number of copies with the breadth and depth of materials. So like for adult fiction, for example, I mentioned Book Talk earlier. There were some really popular books on Book Talk, your Frida McFadden's, your Colleen Hoover's, but we can't just buy Book Talk books. You know, we have to buy literary fiction, we have to buy mysteries, we have to buy sci-fi fantasy. So even though those aren't getting as much buzz, we have to balance it. Um, we talked a little bit about the process of publishers republishing older books, how long that takes. That's completely set by the publishing industry, so that is out of our hands. A book has to have renewed popularity in some way, or it has to be willing the publisher has to be willing to print it. And sometimes there's rights involved, just like you might have noticed with movies or music. Sometimes somebody owns the rights and somebody can't republish it. There was a chunk of time where I think it was The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. There were some of those older horror titles that we would get regular requests for, and those were out of print for like 10 years before a publisher was willing to republish those. So just bear in mind that really does vary and it's all publishing sent. Um, Alondra asked if cataloging was a part of technical services. It is, as noted, sometimes we get full catalog records that just need to be adjusted. Sometimes we have original cataloging that we have to do, which has to do with how long. There was a question about how long it takes from the time books arrive until they get to the library shelves. And for something that we've received, especially Juana, I don't know, how long does it take for something to get to us from us internationally? So, for example, we have a lot of books in Vietnamese. How long does it take for
It,
them to even get here?
it varies, especially now, some of our items that have tariffs on them. So they've been taking a little bit longer. I want to say maybe 3 to 4 weeks. It depends. Um, it just depends on the item. It depends on the vendor, depends on the shipping.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors that go into it. Yeah,
There's some that take a really long time to get to
yeah.
us. So if they take a long time to get to us, and then there's ones that require original cataloging and original cataloging in that language. So not everybody in our staff speaks Vietnamese. So the staff member who selects and speaks it might need to do original cataloging in that language. So then we have to wait for staff time to be able to do that. And then it has to go through all the rest of it, the labeling, etc. And that's kind of why we have multiple queues, as Juana said, so multiple people can work on things at once, but also so we can ensure some materials not just getting prioritized over other material. Like things are grabbed from different queues to ensure that we're always getting new materials and new materials from different collections out to the libraries regularly. So if all of the Vietnamese materials came on January 5th, we're not keeping all of those, at the back of everything that came on January 4th. We're moving materials about to ensure that it's equitably distributed. But if things do come shelf ready, those go out pretty quickly as soon as somebody touches the cart and is able to like verify the information. We used to have a firm like 24, 48 hours. That still happens sometimes. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. We do have staff that unpack boxes every single day. So every single day, things are getting put on carts and moved through the system. Um, Anything else to say on that, on how long it takes to get from the library, from here to the library? I think IB takes a day
No.
too.
Yeah, IB takes a day. Um, yeah, there's a lot of factors, but we try to get them out as soon as possible.
And then there was a question about how we determine which branch the item goes to. And again, that's a selector decision. So we have the floating collections, like our fiction collections mostly float between different locations. So it's very, kind of customer based. If a customer thinks this is popular over here, it's checked out here. And then maybe if they think it's popular at another branch, it's sent there. But for nonfiction and some of our other materials, that selector is determining it based on shelf space, circulation, and breadth and depth of that collection. So this is a moving target because sometimes books wear out, they get out of date, they end up being discarded. And so then there's a gap in that collection at that location. So staff there has to communicate to the selector, like, hey, I got rid of all of my books on science experiments or on like the whale's life cycle or on anatomy, and I need more ones. So they communicate that with the selector, and then they're able to replenish those books. But that's how branch location is determined. And some branches are really small and some are really big. So like Alviso is a little teeny tiny branch. Berryessa is a very large branch, so they have space for more books. And so we have to determine where those books are going based on the shelf space that's available. Uh, Whole bunch more questions. Let's see. I don't know if we'll have time for all these. So I'm
Pam
just in the
Kreider
beginning.
has a good question about our floating materials.
Oh, do you want to go ahead and jump into that and then we can keep going through them? Did you have an
Yeah,
answer?
uh, Pam's referring to the collections that may one day be, let's say, at Willow Glen, and by the time it's returned, it's at Pearl. And then it lives at Pearl for as long as the next person finds it on the shelf, and then they take it to West Valley and etc. There's certain collections based on popularity, just to name a couple of them. Picture books, children's picture books, those are pretty ubiquitous in the library. Those will travel around. Media art materials, the list goes on. But sometimes we add some collections to those floating collections. But for the most part, it's based on what most people are picking up, the genres or the content and all that. That's a good question. So sometimes you'll be surprised, but some people might stress out to think that, well, I really liked the amount of John Grisham books that were at Vineland or whichever. I don't want to have to go across town because there's a new super fan across town, and now all the collections living over there. You could always request it, so it applies the same thing. And wherever it's returned, it's his new home until it's finally met its days. There's also questions about suggest purchases. I put
Can
the
I
link
continue
several
on?
times. I'll go ahead.
I was going to say a little bit more on floating too, is our staff at all of our branches are constantly evaluating their collection. So they're looking at their collections, they're seeing what's popular and what's not popular. And they might say, like, hey, we have these books here and they're not really popular here, but it looks like across town they're doing really, really well. So they'll email staff, like they send out what we call floating alerts for branches. And so other branches will take some of those books so that they might get new life on a shelf at a different location. And we also use it as a way to kind of freshen up the collections at each location, because we have one shared collection amongst 25 locations. So not every location is going to have the same materials, but it allows us to kind of have a wider variety of materials since we're able to house it amongst so many different locations. And they analyze it through, we have back-end software that they use to analyze things like that, to look at those statistics and to look at the different subject areas to make sure that everybody has everything. And it tells you, you're understocked here on this, you're overstocked here on that. So we in tech services do some of that work, but the branch staff are the ones that are really day to day doing that work at the collection at their location. An earlier question from Liz too about a percentage. So do you have a philosophy to spend a percentage at the beginning of the year so that resources to make to mid-year, end of year purchase? And so that is exactly what we do. So books are published throughout the year. We might need to replace stuff throughout the year. So we set a spending goal every single month as selectors, and we try to purchase it evenly throughout the year to ensure that we're able to have enough money to get all of those new releases, but also so that our branches are getting materials evenly throughout the year and that our staff is getting material evenly throughout the year, so that everything isn't, kind of stalled up. We're not getting all our books in January and then they go out and then we just sit around for the rest of the year. We try to keep it evenly paced. Sometimes that's not always possible with some collections, or if there's things like book fairs where we can get really good deals on materials, we want to allocate money so that we can spend those to get a better bang for our buck. But generally, we try to do that, a percentage each month for selectors. Community input about book selection, that was already answered. Ben noted that link was in there. Library accept donations to the collection. There is an author publisher submission policy that's stated, it's on our website, Pam. So you can go to there if you're an author or a publisher and you want to submit a donation to the collection. There's a whole policy listed on there on what we do. So yes, so that is possible as well. Certain books. Yes. So Joy, again, there's a policy on that on our website. If you go to About and Policies, you can find the author publisher submission policy. And Ben did, again, the purchase suggestion. Making choices, faith-based books. It depends if it's a fiction or a nonfiction faith-based book, Kathy, but that is a genre within both of those areas. And so different selectors look at those and choose to purchase them, again, based on popularity on publishing. Remove media from the collection. Ben already said that. So somebody asked about removing media from the collection, age, wear, and tear. Yes, most often the case is wear and tear, especially for media. It kind of gets nasty and scratched. Is there any form of censorship involved despite the Library Bill of Rights? So we are all committed to the Library Bill of Rights and intellectual freedom. We do not censor materials. We do not need to know why anybody wants to read something. We just need to provide access for it. So any sort of we're not censoring things based on our own personal beliefs. Like there's lots of things that I buy that I would not personally read. But the community wants to read them, so we purchase them for the library. Okay, when purchasing and selecting the number of books, do you factor in the amount of time a person needs to wait for availability of a book to check out the number of books available in the library system? I'm not quite sure what you mean on that. If you're just saying holds and popularity, we do try to maintain lower holds. It's not always possible. Ben's noting the question about magazines. There's still so many more. Juana, are there any in there that you want to answer?
I'm looking through them.
Debbie, where does the money come from to purchase books? Ben touched on that a little bit in his chart, which is it comes from a few funds, the general fund, the construction and conveyance tax fund? And those are all determined above all of us in this presentation by library administration and by, I think, city manager's office of how they allocate the budget. And it's approved by city council. When a friends group donates monies to be used for book purchases for that specific branch, how is that processed at technical services? So when friends, or we also get friends groups, we also get what's it called? Like in memoriam donations and things like that. Generally, the friends, whoever is the manager at that location is the one who's the liaison with the technical services unit. So the manager at that branch who's communicating with the Friends group chats with our manager, and they talk about what is desired. So sometimes the Friends groups will have varied um, desires. Some say we only want this to go to juvenile books. Some say we want this for this specific collection, things like that. So those two managers work together and then loop in the selector, and all three of them work together to ensure that those books are getting purchased based on the money from the Friends group. So, what's it called? Oh, it's Gift Trust. That's what it's called. Gift Trust and Friends Funds. So those are kind of special projects, and they do vary. Sometimes they are, like I said, very specific. I think one in the past was like as specific as children's books on, like, it wasn't self-care, but it was something like that. So it was like nutrition, teeth brushing, potty training. It can be as granular as that, and it can be as vague as I just want to, throw this money towards teen graphic novels. And Ben asked about classifications.
Pam Kreider has all the good questions.
Yeah, so when someone wants
We
an
miss you,
item
Pam.
removed, there's again a policy listed on the website. But what happens is they talk to somebody at that branch. The person at the branch talks to them, explains the principles of intellectual freedom at minimum, and usually advises them on material that they might want in the library that's going to meet their need. If they continue, it gets escalated to the senior librarian at that location who chats with them and has an entire conversation. So there's a whole policy, and it's a sub policy within the collection development policy that goes into that, and it lays out exactly what must happen if you want to challenge a book in the library. But it definitely starts with a conversation.
There was an earlier question from Pam about collections, which we get often at a branch, by the way. If you donate a book to a branch, can you please add this to your shelf? Unfortunately, it's not that straightforward. It's too costly for us to do that. We'd have to go through the process Juan had mentioned to get a catalog, to get it bounded and that. Most of the time, the vendors we work with, they do all that work, and we've already had this contracts with them, so it reduces the amount of work involved with that. So unfortunately, we don't just add it straight away. The best process to donate something is through or I'm sorry, to have an item added to the collection is through suggested purchase. Now, what you're referring to, if there's something of that much value, that certainly maybe that book has that much value, uh, be reassured that it won't go to waste. You could still donate it. The proceeds that that book would go to, it gets donated via the Friends of the Library. They have their book sales, and the proceeds from the book sales goes back to the library for programming. So we still make use of that donation.
And then there's a question about how long does the friends request take to get through the process? So it varies. It varies on collection, and it varies on availability of the books. Um, so like the example I mentioned on like children's teeth brushing, things like that, I think that request they wanted all new books, and there just was not enough published on that topic in that year. And so it needed to expand a little bit. So there was some back and forth conversation. It depends on where we're getting the books. So sometimes we can't get the books from the specific vendors who are able to process them and things like that. They might need to be purchased directly from the publisher. That sometimes happens. So there's just a number of different factors. I know it's a little dissatisfying to say like it depends on all of the time-based questions, but it really does depend. And it depends on what else is going on in the library too, right? We're out of being in the thick of the pandemic, but there was a time in the pandemic where we had to pivot everything. Like our shipping was delayed on all of our materials. We had to uh, do all the original cataloging for all the Wi-Fi hotspots and all the processing for those. So that took a lot of staff time. So that impacts all the other work that we do. What is the greatest need for technical services? Could you elaborate on that a little bit more? And what about donations of historical significance like school yearbooks in the California Room? Donations of or donations for the California Room go to the California Room specifically for review. So the people that work in the California Room are the experts on that collection, and they review all of those materials. When they do need to be processed and added to the collection, they come back here. So then those are put into the queue, just like all the other material by date, and then making sure that we go through things kind of evenly. Is there an area that you could use more resources for? I always want to say our acquisitions budget could
Yeah.
always use more money.
Acquisition, staffing,
Mhm.
getting everything processed. We need a lot of staff, but
Yeah, I
there is a
mean,
limit.
yeah, we are limited by what the city can provide year to year,
Mhm.
and we are impacted by whatever the city budget is, whatever the library budget is, both for personnel and um, for acquisitions materials. So
I think somebody asked that earlier in the chat. Where does the money come from?
yeah, and that was general
The
fund
budget.
construction and conveyance, I think.
Mhm.
There was a parcel tax in the past that was used for the library, but I think that tax has passed. Like it was a certain number of tax years that tax was collected. And so, the money from that fund we got, and that's what paid for a bunch of our acquisitions. But I think that has gone past. But I mean, if you're all voters in San Jose and in Santa Clara County, you see those come on the ballot. Sometimes there's taxes for the library, if you were in the area, you remember all of the ones for all of the building renovations. It was gosh, I feel old now, like 15 years ago now, 20 years ago now. So there's a bunch of different ways that the kind of the money works.